What I'm going to do on the very first, so this session, we haven't planned this session really. If it goes well, it was all my idea. If it goes badly, this was all Ian's idea, okay? We've called this final session, I think, the Frontiers of Fintech. So we're going to try and pull together some of the themes, but also reflect maybe on some things that Ian and myself thought would come up, maybe haven't come up, and then also get your thoughts in this. But before I do that, so Palmer, you were on stage before, very kindly, so I think most people who are here will know who you were. But Marie-Lise and then Mai, would you like to introduce yourselves? Because you haven't spoken yet today, so just introduce yourself, where you're from, what you do, just so our audience know who you are. Marie-Lise, we'll start with you.
Hi, I'm Marie-Lise Cook, and I'm from Estonian Financial Supervisor Authority. I'm heading our innovation department there, and my department is responsible for all sorts of fintech-related issues that come into our organization, and we're also responsible for the work that we do in our innovation facilitators, such as Innovation Hub and Regulatory Sandbox.
Thanks so much, Marie-Lise, and then Mai.
Hi everyone, and thanks for staying on to the very end, because I know you want to be outside. My name is Mai Santa Maria. I spent 20 years in private sector. I was lucky or unlucky, not very lucky, to join the Department of Finance almost 8 years ago now. I head up the head of financial advisory team there, so what we try to do is horizon scanning, so pretty much try to see what new areas of policy are coming up that the Department of Finance is not ready, or the economy is actually not ready or prepared to deal with. And in that way, we do get to see fintech quite a bit.
Brilliant, thank you. And just to explain, so Palmer, Marie-Lise and Mai don't know what's coming. So we're throwing them in the deep end a little bit, and we're going to ask them to comment on some of the things that Ian is now going to, I think, slowly bring up onto the screen.
Thanks, Siobhan. I understand you need to stick to the mics there, and then I get this mic. I was just thinking as I was about to cause waves of excitement by unveiling 9 different things up here, that some of the words were what we also had last year, which makes me think, I wonder whether the frontier has inadvertently moved backwards, rather like fintech investment apparently over the last 12 months. But so I know Dominic sat here and he was on this final panel last year, so hopefully no great surprises, because for those of you here last year, we've got some of the same again. But as Siobhan says, we thought we'd just think of 9 things that, as I say, we thought would either come up a lot or maybe deserve just one last bit of airtime in the kind of final half hour. So let's see.
You've got too many things in your hands, Ian.
Yeah, I was just thinking I need 3 hands here. So shall I go ahead and just put all 9 of them up, and then I think we'll pass the floor back to our 3, and you guys can pick the ones you feel you've got a view on that we maybe throughout the day haven't maybe covered enough. So that was the first one. That's new this year. That wasn't there last year, so that's a new one.
So digital ID, this was one of my suggestions, just because I run a lot of events with Global Government Fintech, Global Government Forum, and digital ID, I think, is one of those things that's now dividing kind of our audiences. So we have countries that are very much going down the digital ID route, countries that aren't choosing to go down a digital ID route, and I think it's going to very quickly become clear the extent to which that is kind of preventing some countries from fully being able to embrace new technologies. So I just welcome people's thoughts on that. And it has come up today in quite a lot of us.
I feel we're bookending the day, because Dominic's slides at the start had Austria's digital ID system, did it not? Number 3, digital inclusion. Again, I think various of the sessions have kind of touched on that. We had the question on about the second or third session about these fintech tools. I think the gist was the fintech tools are all very well, but what about, for example, homeless people? So digital inclusion. Number 4, digital currencies, including central bank digital currencies. CBDCs are one of my own favourite topics, but we had a session over the last couple of years, and I'm delighted it has cropped up in various sessions. We haven't overly focused on that. I think some of these projects have maybe a little bit stalled over the last year, but there are some countries really going apace as well. green fintech. So I think at so many of these events, we always think we should give more attention to the urgent priority of climate change. We haven't had a session on that this year, but we thought it is obviously still a very much a developing area and a really important area as well. Where are we? Number 6. We could do an entire week on these topics. Open data, smart data, open finance. I was interested, Marine from Latvia said I think it was in Palmer's session, is actually open banking really innovative anymore? It's been going in, I think, in the UK since the CMA order 2016, and it's a bit of a patchwork quilt, at least across Europe, but is actually open banking in the banking sector that innovative? My sense on that, one of my favourite kind of GovTech use cases is, which Lee Edmonds from CCS spoke about in the payments session, is the UK's HMRC itself, the tax department, itself using open banking to take tax payments. So what I was a little bit talking about, and part of the reason that's there is, although I think Marine is right in the comment she made about open banking, is kind of the government use of open banking, but obviously all of those other topics, basically data portability is just a growing topic. AI.
So artificial intelligence, again, this comes up in every event that we do. Last week, I actually was over in Washington. We ran an event with the federal government over there, including with the team from the CIO of the White House. And all about digital transformation, but every single session included the extent to which AI is just going to fundamentally transform not just the way we work across kind of public sector bodies and across departments, but how we deliver services to the public. And I thought it would come up today, but I'm not sure it has come up to the extent I thought it would in terms of changing the landscape.
Thank you. Crypto, I don't think... I remember still in the taxi coming from Dublin Airport to here last year when the taxi driver said, "Why are you in town then?" And I said, for the sake of keeping it brief, I said it's an event on fintech. And he immediately associated that with, a crypto thing. So an anecdote there, but crypto has occasionally crossed up more in the regulatory, in our EU regulatory session about the European regulation. The example I gave you last year, which is still my favourite example of this, is what I also mean with crypto, is governments actually accepting payments in crypto. So, for example, in the UK, when I need to pay my tax, I pay it in British pounds, but when I go to my local council website and see the option to pay in a cryptocurrency, if I had any, then that's a precise example of kind of what I'm meaning with that, but please interpret it in any way. Finally, blockchain. Again, DLT, distributed ledger technology, has cropped up a bit. We had a session last year specifically on blockchain, which I think Mai was part of last year. It's one of Mai's hot topics as well. So, yeah, we couldn't leave blockchain out of the day completely, of course, and obviously a lot of these interrelate crypto blockchain, so we could draw a very complicated Venn diagram as well. Okay.
So I think now I'm going to ask Mai to pick one or two even. Your thoughts on, did you expect them to come up more today, or is there anything missing from there that you thought would have come up today?
I think they're all interesting topics. Not surprised to see any there. Maybe I would have put in a few of them together, like crypto, blockchain, and CBDCs. I'm surprised we haven't talked about trust, and I'm surprised we haven't talked about sustainability. There's been a little bit of mention on supply chain and sovereignty and of that, but quite frankly, without any of those, none of those topics up there would actually be possible. So trust will impact, say, your CBDCs, it will impact the digital ID, digital inclusion, open data, even how it's used. So the change in trust and where trust actually is anchored in society, we don't understand enough, I think, from a government perspective, because I think that's what potentially will drive the behaviour of citizens and should definitely inform what do we think to deliver as a service. So that's probably one thing. On green tech, maybe I'll pick green fintech, and this is thoughts, and just sprang out because I haven't seen that, so I'm being honest with you. But on the old one that I saw, we're all talking here about fintech and digital, and it's a bit like talking about electric cars, and then you walk outside and you know there's nowhere to plug it in to charge it. So where are our communications and wide infrastructure people? They should be sitting here. We can't be talking about any of that without actually knowing we have those data centers and your cloud providers and all that kind of stuff. So from a government perspective, unless there's a lot more systems thinking and we're actually putting that all together, all our best intentions when it comes to fintech and actually applying those technology changes to our products as a government, where are they going to go? So there was a comment there earlier on, for example, about the satellite imagery that revenue might be using, which is fantastic, but that's actually based on a very old satellite that needs to be replaced. So we need to be very, very conscious that all of that is fantastic, but the reality is it's actually all dependent on a bunch of cables and metal and stuff, and we need to look after that. It's not as sexy because maybe it doesn't get us into here, but I think it's something we need to consider, mostly for the systems thinking perspective. How do we engage with those other departments that they don't look at it from the angle that we look at? That's my green fintech piece. I think the sustainability piece, it's important. The data centers, it's a very hot topic in Ireland. We do have a very large FDI here. Those, we have large, as you know, social media companies based here. They need data centers. Those data centers might require their own risk and operational back offices. But how does that interact with the grid, the energy, but also the wider supply? If we decide to do something from a government perspective, say a digital ID, and then we have to fight for electricity grid space with the providers of your social media account, we haven't done our job right. So that's just something to consider as well.
So really interesting. I mean, all that fixing everything behind the scenes and getting the infrastructure and the building blocks in place, and also bringing in, I think, which we didn't touch on today, the importance of having the right people in the room and working across professions. Really, really important, because you can't do any of this without that. Ian, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on blockchain, Mike, because I know you were on that panel last year, and my memory of it kind of last year was still a struggle for tangible public sector blockchain use cases. And I'm just thinking from memory, I know there was a hackathon in Ireland some years ago, even possibly pre-COVID.
We did it in January 2019.
Yes, so pre-COVID.
Pre-COVID.
I mean, either in Ireland or examples you might be aware of beyond Ireland do you see momentum here? Just one example I know comes into my inbox is something called the European Blockchain Sandbox, which seems to be working its way through, I think, the first cohort of 20 use cases or something. I slightly lost touch with it, but
that was EPSI. Yeah, the use of blockchain for government public services is tricky. Yeah. So, for example, sorry, you can hear me. Yeah. Like you mentioned, there, paying your taxes with crypto. Well, you know, depending on which crypto, it's open, so everybody will know how much you paid in taxes. So if you want that kind of information openly on the chain for everyone to see, if you're happy with it, let's do it. So there's an element of openness that just seems counterintuitive to the public services good or use of it. So that's why it's interesting. Then on the other side, people do not want to have walled gardens around some data. So you'd want to be able to have the information, but also accessible. So there's do we do it open source? Is it decentralized or permissioned or permissionless? So there are elements of DLT and blockchain that we could use, like smart contracts. Yeah. So, you know, you could totally have an instant tax payable to transaction, so you don't have to collect it yourself. Yeah. Why shouldn't we? Yeah. That's the technology is there, and it's possible. So there are possible elements to blockchain that I think would be used, more than just saying that technology overall should be used for public services.
Yeah. I completely agree with everything that Maya has said. I'd sort of work backwards, right? Because there's a lot of things you can do without the blockchain that you can also do on the blockchain. So things like programmable payments,
Yeah.
that's just conditional programming logic that you can do without a block. We can do that anyway, right? Programmable money is something different and potentially something darker as well, but it exists, right? That's different. Why does blockchain exist, at least in the form that it exists in now? It exists to solve the double spend problem, right? Or to put it in a more, I guess, simpler way, it just creates trust in a trustless environment. That's what it is. That's, at its basic, that's what it is. And you've got to ask the question, you know, in what use case is having data broadly or narrowly distributed, depending on if it's public or private, and the ability to act on that data, whether it's permissioned or permissionless, where would that be helpful? Where would that be helpful where data is dispersed and you need to verify and validate it? Everyone needs to have access to that data. They can see that data in real time. That data are synced in real time. The question is, where is that useful? And it is useful somewhere. And the person that answers that question is going to become a billionaire.
Is it
Trillionaire.
I may be getting my test cases mixed up, but is it house buying? Is what? Is it house buying or car buying? Are they?
Well, I mean, if I had an answer, I'd be on a desert island somewhere. But I mean,
fundamentally, that's smart contracts. I think.
Yeah, no, but fundamentally, that is, you know, what you can do on the blockchain and what you can't do on the blockchain. I think that's what we've got to go back to.
And I'm going to bring in Mary-Lise in a minute for your thoughts, but I just want to check on the conversation we're having at the moment, blockchain. Anybody want to throw in, because this is also your session, does anybody want to throw in a comment or a question right now? Yes, down here.
So with blockchain, like really important point, and it's come up a number of times today, is in what problem are you solving, right? Is in where is the technology leading to, you know, do we actually need it, right? Totally valid point. But that's where, when it comes to DLT and blockchain, we need to look at the multitude of use cases that there are, for example, and maybe starting with the ones that we can best understand if you're coming from a traditional background, right? Like, our kids probably understand it more than we do. They're already operating in tokens on, what's it called, Roblox, or one of those games where they're buying tokens that are, you know, armor or whatever. They're already operating in the metaverse. They're already knowing what's going on. If you give a teenager cash now, they're probably like, what's this? Put it in my Revolut, or, you know, yeah, I don't know what that is. But the use cases for us to kind of get comfortable with it, things like, for example, that I've seen are a NASDAQ-listed reinsurer who now has a tokenized offering. When it comes to, you know, and obviously coming from traditional finance background, if you know, it's brand new to you, you're seeing like, what is a Bored Ape NFT? I have no clue what that is. But a licensed, insured reinsurer with traditional historical financial performance, I can get behind that, I can understand, I can physically touch the financial performance and stats, et cetera, et cetera. That's, you know, one use case. But proving those use cases, obviously, in developing countries, the biggest use case is banking the unbanked. Another use case being the democratization of access to financial services, giving people who are not ultra high net worths access to investing and such. You know, other use cases that we've seen are like, you know, a fund that purchases masterpieces, and you can then tokenize that and own a piece of it. You're not going to own your Van Gogh yourself, but you can have an access to that. But having, I think, that cataloging use cases, cataloging sectors where they sit, and then developing a roadmap of how you can get comfortable with which use cases do we need the most? Which can we understand best, and moving on from there, because blockchain and the progression of it is inevitable. It's how we embrace it. And education is absolutely the number one, and training, yeah.
Thanks. Yes, Dominic.
Just a very swift remark, because what you just said, Parma, was just perfectly to the point. You need the blockchain in a system where you have no trust. So it creates trust in a trustless system. So I would remark, whenever the state or government is involved, at least governments that I would have in mind would not need the blockchain, or just in a very, very limited use case, because we are trusted agents. So we just need a spreadsheet and someone who is working according to the law.
I'm not sure every
Risk
citizen would have
Spreadsheets.
opinion, but it's a very positive picture of the public sector. I like that a lot. Marie-Lise, we're coming over to you. Your thoughts on any of those 9, or also, as in my board in trust, and any other issue that you think should have come up today?
I think cybersecurity is definitely missing, and I think it doesn't need any comment on why. So it's really important. Yeah. Maybe to add something to this blockchain story. I don't know, has anyone heard about what is Bank of International Settlements come up in their last economic report, where they basically told that over the history there have been those transformational leaps, and these are the leaps that have helped or enabled some new financial instruments to be created. And for example, if we take trade, then you know, we used those physical coins, so it was really unpractical and safe, but we did that. Then there was this next level when we figured out that we can use ledger entries, and also this double entry bookkeeping. Then there was this level when we made it all digital, and then it enabled us to make those cross-border transactions. So based on that, basically thinks that we are again on this really great and huge transformational leap. And they believe that this time this will likely include tokenization, unified ledger, and also programmability. And they think that it's not going to be something that is going to be solved by the private sector. So they don't see that it's going to happen by our current cryptosphere. But rather they think that this kind of infrastructure is going to be built by central bankers and running on CBDCs. And they also think that this is something that actually helps to solve this problem that we have, data in silos. And this will make open finance possible, this will make advanced AI tools possible, and much more. So this is their view, and this is, I don't know, maybe you also have some views on that.
Ian, did you want to come back on?
Yeah, thanks, Marie-Lise. I mean, a lot of that goes back to this Bank for International Settlements concept of the unified ledger, and then it all flows from there. But I get a sense I think they made an announcement, they were committing to it, they're going to be working with private companies, actually, I think, on building it, but it's still some years.
And they're not using blockchain, they're using this unified ledger, or they're using this definition as unified ledger, not blockchain. And I understood that there's some kind of difference, that this unified ledger is still a concept, and it consists a lot more than just this technology behind it. So,
Palmer, over to you. So you'll pick any one or add one of your own.
There's probably a couple, if I could. Just on that, I always think just because something is technically feasible doesn't make it commercially viable. 100%. And I think, especially in the fintech space, that's what we come across a lot. And maybe I'll start with crypto, and then I want to talk a little bit about data as well, because I think privacy is missing, and that's very important. On crypto, look, the Bitcoin blockchain particularly is wonderful. It's beautiful. It solves an old computer programming problem, right? the Byzantine generals problem, trust in a trustless environment. No downtime in 14 years. It's kept ticking along and it's done wonderfully well. And I think if people want to buy and sell crypto assets, including Bitcoin, they should be allowed to do that. But when things like FTX happen and the implosion that happened there, the Terra Luna coin, the people that say, well, regulators are the bad, are the same people that on forums that I've seen, the exact same people are like, well, where were the regulators? The regulators are asleep on the job. And actually, one of the reasons perhaps that it's not come up so much this year compared to last year is there's been a lot of movement in the last 12 months. So the Financial Stability Board have published 2 sets of high-level recommendations, one on crypto markets and activities, and the other on so-called global stablecoins. And of course, these will influence the development of legislation and regulation around the world. IOSCO have published 2 pieces of recommendations, one on DeFi, one on broader crypto assets. The Basel Committee have published their standard on the prudential treatment of bank exposure to crypto assets. So actually a lot's been done in that space. And this morning, the IMF, we just published our first standalone FSAP, Financial Sector Assessment Program of Kazakhstan, where we had our first ever standalone piece looking at crypto assets as well. So, I encourage you to take a look at that. So I just wanted to say that actually there is some work on the regulation space happening here. And then I just wanted to finish off with data. And again, I'm very sorry because, my world is very small. It's regulation supervision. So my perspective is through that. If I massively oversimplify what financial services does, it just moves money around. That's its job. It moves money around from A to B. Oh, look, I know it's more complicated than that, but at its base, that is what it is. For example, a bank will get money from people that have it to people that need it. It grows the economy. Capital markets, insurance, they have their own roles, but the aim is just moving money around. And where that money pools, we tend to think to ourselves, well, actually, there's a lot of risk there because we want this money to flow through an economy as openly as possible with as little friction as possible, ideally. But where it pools, you start to think, well, if something goes wrong here, people are going to lose trust in this system and they'll rather just keep cash under their mattress. So we say, actually, these guys generate a bit of risk, so we're going to subject them to prudential regulation. Where it touches consumers, we put conduct and consumer protection regulation. Where we think people might have inside information and be able to manipulate that money that's flowing through the system, we impose market integrity regulation. Where we think that money could be used by actors for nefarious means, there's financial integrity regulation. And it all makes a lot of sense. And that introduces friction, but it also introduces trust. Because consumers are now more confident in dealing with banks and securities firms, because actually they know if something were to go wrong, there are regulatory protections there. And then firms are more comfortable navigating in this space because they know that every different participant is subject to either prudential, conduct, market integrity, financial integrity regulation, depending on what they're doing. We're there now with data. We want data to flow through an economy as frictionless as possible, but it's important to create some friction because regulation is the cornerstone of a well-functioning market. It's not an inhibitor, it is what makes everything possible, as far as I'm concerned. So the question is, how do you create that trust? Well, I'm not saying where data are pooled, for example, with incumbents or with big tech, that they should be subject to the same capital requirements that banks are. I'm not saying that. But is there an equivalent of prudential requirements that could help generate trust? What does consumer protection look like in this space? What does market integrity look like in this space? And actually, you need to have fundamental data protection frameworks, which, many of us in Europe, UK, we have GDPR. On top of that, you can then say, right, you've got these data protections. And, in many countries around the world, that's not a given, data protection frameworks. And where they exist, they're not always that robust. Once you have that baseline, on top of that, you can build data portability, like open banking, open finance. But again, then the question goes, what's your incentive to engage with this? Because for me, there is no way, there is a way, but right now, the way that we're interacting with the digital economy is very different to the way that we interact with each other now. because in the digital world, there is no privacy. So the question is, how do you create confidence to allow actors to share their data in a meaningful manner while ensuring that there's privacy? And I think there's exciting research that's being done in this space, and I think privacy-enhancing technologies hold a lot of promise. But without privacy, I don't want to engage with a lot of the digital economy, and I know a lot of others don't. And I know that sometimes gets a little controversial when we talk about CBDCs. I wouldn't hold CBDC. Not if I knew that my data was protected. And that's not because I'm hiding something. But I think privacy is something that many of us here would expect to have as a fundamental right.
And it connects to trust.
Absolutely.
So privacy and trust very connected. Ian, I will come back to you in a sec, but does anybody have any comments or questions on anything that you've heard there around blockchain, the example that Marilise gave, or anything to do with data and privacy and data? Yes. Because quite often when we do other events on data, a lot of people think GDPR can also be a barrier to data sharing in a way that works against public service delivery as well. Yeah.
Can I ask about things like a single point of failure, like given digital operational resilience acts and operational resilience, we're getting really concentrated now, whether it's in the crypto space or the banking space or the fintech space, relying upon a couple of key organisations that sit outside the scope of day-to-day regulation. And I think maybe it goes back to the point of trust as well, because that's all you have in that game. Any thoughts on, will we get closer to a single point of failure that brings down the system?
Mine. We've had some systems that have been brought down, haven't we? I mean,
Sorry, but it's a kind of question. I think this is great and this is key, and this goes to my point of systems thinking. It's great to look at the technologies, but we have to. And I think from a public services, from a government perspective, our citizens are not thinking about this because I think instinctively they're relying on us to be looking at this, and maybe we're not. So to your point, that systems thinking for me has to include that, do we know what are those systems, those unique points of failure? Do we know them? I mean, someone's going to come in and literally unplug the cables that are actually going to run our banking system. Someone can shut down the one Galileo satellite that provides our data. I mean, these are the points that we should really considering. And it's the bloodline to fintech, to all the services. So 100% agree. It's something that I think that we don't, from a government's perspective, maybe it's happening and I'm not aware. I'm not saying that either. I'm just thinking maybe we don't talk about it more. It's like we should be doing system thinking. And I think it's, again, to the trust. Maybe we didn't mention it today, but I think in the last 30 minutes we've said the word trust enough times to make up for it. Implicitly, we trust our government and we think they're doing this. And if we're not, we need to consider why not, and we should really put it on the table. And quite frankly, it's a bit daunting, you know, like if you ask me to go into a room with all these super intelligent guys from Google and Amazon and whatever, and I feel I don't even know how to ask the questions. I totally understand that. So what is that we're lacking? Are we not asking the questions because we don't have the technical expertise on the government side? Well, if that's the case, we need to address that. Maybe the answers are on the other side. We just need to reach out to get them. But from a systems overview, from an economic and a financial services, because it's fintech, I think we definitely should be looking at those points. If anything, maybe to summarize that point is, I think that today I was actually quite surprised how optimistic and buoyant I think the discussion. Cybersecurity was barely mentioned, knowing the amount of ransomware that was paid last year. Points like this of risks, we didn't really cover risks, and they really go hand in hand with fintech. So just, sorry, on a downer to consider.
we can't make that our last point, so I'm going to invite anybody to come up with a positive point to end on, so we don't want to end. Yes, this will be the last comment.
But I don't want to be last because I am a little bit less optimistic, as was mentioned now, and you definitely should to bring somebody who will summarize and then bring against this positive feedback. I would like thanks for all of these positive views for today, but I think that it's also important to add that it's always pleasure to be between the civil servants, representatives of the governments, representatives of the industry who are supporting the technology. But I think that it's also fair to declare that we have a lot of conspiracy. We have a lot of hoax about the digitalizations and looks for the discussion in the EU about the digital euro. What does it mean after the COVID? I don't want to go deeper, but I think that we should to underline the importance of the communication.
Yeah.
And don't forget, we didn't tell a lot about it, this cybersecurity and our ability to supervise this. Because this, I think this one technical and one more conspiracy line could little bit stop us in this, and if we lose the confidence, I think that it will be the good topic for the funds and for the limited number of population. But if we really want to bring the innovation in the daily life, I don't know the best solution. I still believe that explanation, communication, and to give the choice to choose, because that's otherwise the.
I'm going to, just for time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take your slightly less positive, so we definitely need more comms. We definitely need to build that trust. We need to be aware of those risks. Definitely, but I'm also going to take your positive, which was how wonderful it was to be in the room with all of the people here today. Ian, do you want to say any last words on this particular session before I hand over to you to close?
No, I didn't, but as we were looking to end on a positive note, I thought of one, which is to go really, to go full circle to back where we started the day, which is to say, one of the points I made in my opening remarks was about government procurement.
Yeah.
And one of the things that our ongoing editorial content and the webinars, and to an extent today, seeks to examine and explore is when government itself gets behind technology solutions. I think it was the quote that I started the day that Ez Britton from the UK said last year. You know, that's almost one of the best things that government can do if they themselves are investing in the fintech solution, which may not necessarily be fintech or from a fintech company. That's slightly paraphrasing badly Palmer's opening point as well. You know, that's kind of our ongoing mission, and I think you know, today what we've and Palmer picked up on the point is we've, you know, the name of what we do is global government fintech. You know, today we've certainly been global. It even helped having Peter's Australian accent on the front row to make sure we covered the entire globe. But you know, for example, we've had Sudhanshu from India. We've had Moad from Bermuda. So many people travel from across Europe as well. So I certainly think we've really done our best to be global today. Government, an interesting question. Are central banks government? Should we be global public sector fintech? Well, that's probably even more of a mouthful, but you know, we've tried to reflect government more broadly than just central government. And then fintech, well, that's the magical or mystery word, isn't it? So I think Palmer summarized, when Palmer opened his session, he, you know, I really tried to make probably less eloquently the same point at the start. So I think that's the challenge facing this, but I also see it as the real opportunity, and events like this are designed to have that discussion and kind of build that community around love them or loathe them, those three, well, the last one anyway, love that, around those three words. So.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ian. I'd like to say thanks to Mai, to Palmer and to Marie-Lise for that session. As I say, there are drinks now, but I just want to say thanks to all of you as well. It's been fantastic to have you all in the room. Thanks to Ian for none of this would happen without Ian. And most of you know him through kind of calls behind the scenes and everything, but thank you so much to Ian. I'm just going to leave you, Ian, to say a couple of very, very final thoughts, if you like, before hopefully we see you all back here, or not, well, somewhere next year. I don't think it's yet dates or anything to be decided, but I look forward to seeing you all, and thank you so much.
Thank you to you, Siobhan, because it takes a lot to keep going through all the different panels, and I think Siobhan has mentioned it, but she was in Washington at the end of last week with all of our team as well, doing a kind of similar exercise in the US, so well done to you. But yes, thank you again to all of our speakers who've travelled. Thank you to you, the audience members who stayed to the end. A well-deserved drink imminently beckons. Thank you to my own colleagues beyond Siobhan. So here today are Brett, Raquel and George, and all those back in the office in London as well. So thank you for all your hard work. And thank you to our sponsors as well. So thank you to Clearbank and Microsoft, Exhibitor Provenance, Fintech Island for the promotional work you've done as well, Peter. Thank you again, and drinks are next door.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone.